If you've already filled out a card, just state your name and address before you come and speak.
Hi, Kathy Jones from Canton. It's just a question, and your discussion about the housing and that you couldn't run afoul of the Florida codes, correct? Building codes.
I'm sorry, this has to be on this item, subject to
No, that's where I'm getting to.
Okay.
Okay, so you passed this resolution about gun sanctuary and state laws, national laws change. Where does that leave you with a resolution? That's where I see a little conflict here. How do you get away from following state and or national laws when on another subject you're concerned about, having a resolution that's against the building code? So that was my question.
Okay, it'll be answered once everybody comes up and speaks. Thank you. Next.
Rosemary Nillis, Inverness, and I agree. Each one of us has the right to decide whether or not to have a firearm or to carry. I know of no current threat to our rights. We are, right now, protected by the Second Amendment. The examples from other counties, specifically Marion, which you are looking at adopting, they refer to federal laws, and state law enforcement officers of the state cannot be compelled to enforce federal laws. So I believe you're talking about federal laws. Certainly your comments have indicated that you're concerned about federal laws. But your comments were about self-defense, each of you. It is not clear which laws, current or proposed, you perceive as a threat to your right to defend yourself. And it's not clear whether there are current laws or laws being proposed at the federal level to which you object. It is also not clear to me whether there are current federal laws being proposed that you support. I mentioned 3. I don't know if you support those or not. You don't have to answer. It would be necessary for me and for probably everybody in Citrus to understand exactly which federal laws you would support and which ones you would not support. Because if you do plan to pick and choose federal laws to enforce, this needs to be stated very clearly, very publicly. My inquiries also apply to state laws. Although your resolution doesn't refer to state law, you have referred to other states who have objected to state laws. So again, my inquiry would be, if there are such laws that current or proposed to which you object, I would like to know those publicly, and if there are current or proposed state laws to which you would want to adhere, I would want to know very specifically, we all would want to know which ones to which you would adhere and not adhere. And I'm very thankful for your support of mental and behavioral health facilities here in Citrus. Cannot agree with you more, it's very important. But I do want to point out that persons with mental health issues are usually the victims, not the perpetrators of gun violence. The statistics are there. It is the ready availability of firearms, not mental health, that causes the U.S. to have a gun death rate 25 times higher than other developed countries. Mental health problems exist in all countries, in all of the developed countries. Yet only in the United States do we have a rate of gun violence that has created a public health crisis. Thank you. Kathy Gates, Inverness. We all love living in this country. Our founding fathers gave us the First Amendment, the right of free speech. And over the years, in order to have a more dignified and civilized society, we have passed laws for restrictions on our First Amendment rights. We have laws against obscenity, fraud, child pornography, speech integral to illegal conduct, speech that incites violence, all kinds of things. You can't give threats. Now, I don't lay in bed at night worrying about these laws impeding on my First Amendment rights. The Second Amendment was given to us by the founding fathers, and our society has evolved into what it has become, where it is necessary, where people are saying that we need to really look at more background checks, the red flag laws. We have some weapons on the streets that I have no idea why law enforcement would have to deal with them on a daily basis. Any of those restrictions in laws, I don't see how they would impede your ability to protect your family. The Lake County Commission in Central Florida recently became the first county in the state to pass a resolution declaring itself a Second Amendment sanctuary. Adam Skaggs, the Chief Counsel and Policy Director for the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, told Fox News that the resolution is an illusion. The Lake County Commission's resolution is purely a political, symbolic gesture that doesn't really have any legal weight whatsoever. It's really important to understand the lack of significance of what they've done here. And so that's where we are here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Second time? Third and final time? Okay, commissioners,
That'd be correct.
right. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, one of the things is, where you look at this, the whereas are simply stating factual statements from the Constitution to Supreme Court case law, all the way down to the fact of dual sovereignty between the U.S. Constitution, the federal government, and the state in our federalist society. And in that, it's not saying that we won't obey rules. Matter of fact, it examples that we are going to obey rules. The first and foremost, the most important rule, the Constitution. So I think some people are reading into this things that are not in the fact. Next, one of the things that people have to understand is the Second Amendment is currently having pressure of people wanting to supporting and making public statements to eventually, if they were able to get elected, to change things and to go in and get rid of certain kinds of weapons. Matter of fact, it was kind of referred to here. The Second Amendment has different values that people see. Some people see it for hunting, some people see it for being able to defend your house, and some people like me actually see it's an ability to fight off an oppressive government if it ever happens to come that way. Some people say, well, certain weapons aren't needed in the society. Matter of fact, it's funny because during our founding fathers' time, there was weapons that shot multiple rounds as well. We've always had those. Last but not least, there have been a lot of people that have made claims about 25 times higher gun violence here. So John Lott, who wrote the book More Guns, Less Crime, actually tried to get the author of that study that says 25 times more to give any of his research information. It was never given. Tried to answer how that research was done in such a way to where they could go to hundreds of countries and with no staff and no support research hundreds of countries' documents, which they did not do, to find that number. So that number of 20 times higher has been disputed by very educated and well-written people. So when you use that number, please use it's been suggested. Last but not least, this country is based off of the Constitution, and it was fought with people who had a well-regulated militia. People had guns in their house that when it came time to come and defend their country, they were able to stand up to a much larger entity, the British. And because of courageous people like that, we now have the free country we do. And earlier it was asked, what are we teaching our kids? We're teaching our kids that we have a constitution that gives them rights. We're teaching our kids that you have the freedom to defend yourself, not only in your home, but against an oppressive government. And we're also going to teach them that here in Citrus County, we value that completely.
Anybody else before?
Can I just,
Okay. I just want to make a couple of points. First thing I will say, unlike the first go-around, the speakers that came up this time were very nice, very well presented, gave great facts and information, and didn't call us names. So I really very much appreciate the tone of the conversation this time around. That was much better. And so when you do that, I think people have a real tendency to listen to what you're saying. And in some sense, I would not argue with anything that Commissioner Smith just said. I think that should be worth something right there, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I can't come to, with anything he said, I think he was spot on. This is one thing I will say, though. We hear this all the time. 60% of the population thinks this. No, that's 60% of those polled. It's not 60% of the population. Then you have to know what the sample of that polling was. That's why different polls, and I will point out to you, I don't want to get too much into politics, but every poll leading up to the last presidential election, everyone told us that that person wasn't going to win. So if we put all of our, the polls say this, so we might as well already do this. I'll tell you what I go by. When I ran for election last time, I had people calling me and saying, where do you stand on the Second Amendment? And I would say, well, man, that really doesn't apply in Citrus County. We don't make decisions based on the Second Amendment in Citrus County. Yeah, it does, because I want to know what kind of person I'm voting for and what you stand for. So I had to tell them what my position was on the Second Amendment. That's what voters expect. They expect, perhaps you don't agree with it, but the people that voted for me, most of them do agree with that. And the other thing we'll say, and there might be some ground in this, but I think a lot of these laws are already in place. The thing about, who can get guns and stuff, all you have to do is look at the requirements in states on people to have a concealed weapons license. It goes into great extent about, criminal background, but then it goes into domestic violence and all those kind of things. So there's a lot that people have to go through to do that. And it still comes back to, I think Commissioner Smith made a great point. We have one of the lowest crime rates that you'll see when you compare to other states for the population of our size, and I think it's because there are so many people that take self-defense. And when you hear sheriffs like Grady Judd, saying when you have county sheriffs say the best thing people can do is arm themselves. You're the first line of defense. So if folks want to say, I choose to unarm myself, I choose to walk around helpless and rely when I make a phone call that somebody's going to be there and get there, that's your choice. You're allowed to do it. Okay, and I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is people trying to infringe on other people's rights to do that. But I will say this in closing, Mr. Chairman. Somebody said, and somebody interviewed somebody about I think it was Lake County or whatever, which we have a copy of their here, that said it's purely symbolic. Maybe it is. Maybe with the force of law, our resolution holds no weight as far as enforcement, because resolutions are usually a way of a governing body to say we are resolved in this. And I think that is, if we agree to pass this, we're saying we're resolved to support and defend the Second Amendment as well as all the Constitution. And so you could argue all day, is it symbolic, is it not? My opinion is, even if it's symbolic, that's something that we're saying that we agree. So I don't know what force of law it'll carry, but I agree with the symbolism, and I will support it.
One speaker, and I'm sorry, I didn't write down your name this time, mentioned or asked for which specific federal laws we were concerned about or afraid of. And I don't know that at this point that there is a specific law that we're necessarily afraid of, as much as, and I don't think it's just this board, I think it's the public in general, not everybody certainly, but there is a concern that there's a growing force in Washington that right now they don't have the ability to change our Second Amendment rights. If that group or that that political mindset were to grow large enough to control both houses of Congress, to control the White House, to be able to move their anti-Second Amendment agenda forward, I think again this is laying out our position for our congressional delegation to say, here's where we're at. As Commissioner Kitchen just said, it may not hold any water at all, but it's laying out that the current governing body, elected by the residents of the county, this is our position. Whether or not it holds any water in a court of law, I don't know. But it's laying that out for them, hopefully, to encourage them to stand their ground to protect our Second Amendment rights as it's written in the Constitution.
So I'll give you my 2 cents, because I can guarantee you I have more experience with firearms than anybody in this room. 24 years military and 28 years law enforcement. I got a lot more than you. You know, there's a couple kind of people in this world, all right, when we talk about guns. There's the law-abiding citizens and there's the ones that aren't. Right? I've met both of them. I was undercover narcotics officer and I got robbed at gunpoint, had a gun stuck to my head. I've taken off firearms from people that are just driving down the street that, you know, had 2 guns on them. I've met people with concealed weapons permits that as soon as I stop them, they're like, hey, just to let you know I have a concealed weapon in my hip. And I treat them just like I would anybody here in the audience. It depends on that person. I think we all seen what happened over in London recently. You know, people getting stabbed, and that's not the first time. People getting tractor trailers and running through crowds. I used to do events over in Crystal River, as Mr. Kitchen knows. I did a lot of the security stuff for him. And when we had that one happen in France, we started moving cars and trucks in front of our barricade because barricades wouldn't do it. People worry about people killing people with guns, but they don't worry about everything else. And that's, to me, is the sticking point. And granted, you know, we talk about what federal things that we're going to, this isn't to prevent federal laws from being enacted, in my opinion, because people talk about the red flag issue. They talk about doing 30-day holds on firearm purchases. I honestly have no problem with that whatsoever. But that's not, I think, what this resolution is about. Because if you look at one of these things, and you know, and really all these warehouses are factual information. But I looked at one which is due to dual sovereignty of the U.S. Constitution, the federal government has no authority to enforce state laws, and states cannot be compelled to enforce federal laws. That's one of the things that are on here. And I know that for a fact. Being a Coast Guard member and getting on the way, I have the right to stop people and check for firearm violations. The thing is, I can't enforce state laws. So, I mean, all this information is factual. And just like as being a deputy sheriff, I can't enforce federal laws. You can't do it. So the laws that are, you know, talking about the federal laws and so forth like that, I don't think this really pertains to any of that issues. And we do have issues. I mean, I think, and granted, I think what happens is when people see these incidents that happen at schools and how traumatic they are, I think everybody comes together trying to find a way to fix it. And I wish we all had an answer, because we don't. We can always try to prevent these things from happening. There's a lot of terrorist groups out there, and I've dealt with terrorist groups being overseas, being security forces overseas, that you deal with and you worry about all these issues. You can't prevent them. Well, you can prevent them by being vigilant, by watching, being armed. You know, and there's been a lot of things going on where stuff has been stopped because people have firearms on them. Robberies taking places, you know, kidnappings taking places, and thank God somebody has a gun that prevents those things from happening. Usually the general public doesn't see these things happening. They look at the news and see what's there, and they react to those things. And I do too. I see those things and I feel terrible and I wish there was something I could do. But the fact that people have guns, I don't think is really the issue. Because honestly, and I've had this discussion with Sam Himmel in our schools, there's vulnerabilities everywhere you have right now. And just banning guns, for an example, is not going to fix that problem. There's ways to try to prevent that. We had this problem in law enforcement for years. You have somebody that you Baker Act. And what happens is you confiscate their guns. If they have guns, the guns go to their parents or something like that. By the time the person gets released from Baker Act, they get the guns back. Well, you Baker Act them because they're a danger to people, themselves or others, and that's why you Baker Act them. But the laws were, those guns go back to the people. Well, that's changing, and I think everybody up here would say, hey, that's a good thing. If you got somebody that's being Baker Act and they got some mental problems, they shouldn't get these guns back. But I will tell you right now, it's very easy, no matter what law you put in place, it's very easy for a bad guy to get a gun. It's extremely easy. How do you fix that? So this resolution right here, I think, is just saying that, and I personally, I believe in guns. My wife and I both have concealed weapons permits. We got them pretty recently because obviously prior to becoming a commissioner, I didn't need to have one, but we both have one because and I'm not really worried about myself, especially being in law enforcement, because people want to find me, they're going to find me. I mean, I hope I treated people good, but, we do it because we worry. When we go out, when we go to different communities and stuff like that, I feel nervous sometimes with what's going on. But this is really for the good guys, and if you take out the bad guys out of this picture, the resolution's okay. We're not saying we're not going to follow through with any of these things like, red flag. No, we're not going to do that as a commission because I think we want to see stuff like that. At least I do, and I hope everybody else here does. It's just trying, there's not a difference between, to me, an AR-15 than a Glock 40. Handgun, or I could kill just as many people with both of them. I am very proficient in reloading a handgun. All right, I want to make a bigger magazine. They're easy to make, and I think Commissioner Smith will verify that because anybody that has any training in military or law enforcement can quickly change magazines and go from there. It's fairly easy to make a semi-automatic automatic, and I have friends that have licenses for automatic weapons. So if people want to do these things, they can pretty much do it. And honestly, if somebody came up with an idea of how to prevent any of these school killings, I wish we would come up with something. But I'm going to vote for this resolution. And when you folks come up here and speak about it, I can understand where you're coming from. But being somebody that's been around firearms all their life, do we really look at banning certain things, or do we start banning knives and guns? Do we start banning trucks? Do we start doing perimeters around events? What about the kid that got thrown over the balcony up in Chicago or something like that? I mean, how do you prevent those things from happening? You can't, because people, and I've met a bunch of them, people are not all there. And if there was a way to pinpoint those people, we'd be in a lot better place. But there's things that go into place that try to prevent these things from happening. I'm very supportive of those things when it makes sense. I don't think an overall ban on firearms is the right way to go because, do you want to ban a rifle, a hunting rifle? Because how hard would it be, how hard would it be to go and shoot one person with a hunter rifle? It's easy. So, when reading this thing over, and I do have a couple legal questions on it, so I'm going to ask those in just a minute when I'm done spilling my guts. But, when you look at this, and I agree with what I think Commissioner Kitten said, that really, maybe Commissioner Kennard, this really legally doesn't, to me, bind us to a lot. It is more, what's that word? Symbolic. Because honestly, if you talk to anybody that is a legal gun owner, they follow the law very specifically. Because, I don't want to go to jail. I follow mine. I mean, when I have my license concealed, my gun concealed, our license is on the way the state law is. So I mean, I think that's where this is going. But I did actually have a couple of questions from our attorney.
I want to say something.
You want to do it before? Or you want
I can do it now, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead, and then I'll wait
Well,
for the
first and
questions.
foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for your comments, because I think they're spot on. What this has to do is there are being comments being made out there. Let's just be real clear right now. There's being comments being made about coming and getting certain guns. They start getting one gun, they're going to get the next gun. I'm a gun advocate. My family has been prepared. I heard how many kids have given their life. Well, I tell you what, if your kid was in that school when I was walking by, and when the sheriff deputy ran off and I ran in and stopped the deadly force and saved your child, you'd be thankful. You'd be damn thankful that your child was saved, or your grandchild was saved, or your wife was saved. My wife works at the school. And I agree, teachers should be, if they train properly, they should be able to carry a firearm to stop the deadly force. You're not going to stop, like Commissioner Chairman Coleman said, you're not going to stop people from getting guns. It's a black market out there bigger than we all can imagine. But by God, when they know you have one, it's a little bit different playing field. So again, I appreciate the support up here. I am a law-abiding citizen when it comes to firearms. I train my children. They go through hunter education. They go through they went through different programs to learn how to use them, to understand what they're for. But again, I just find that appalling, when people come up and about the children losing their lives and other people losing their lives. But if we were there to stop that deadly force, you'd be damn thankful. So again, I appreciate the support here today, and I'm ready to make a vote.
I did, if I could, just go on, I just have a couple of legal questions, so Beth, if you are ready. And they're pretty minor, because I looked over each one of these and I kind of compared each one to each one.
Yeah, they're about awesome.
And they're almost all the same, except there was a couple wording questions in here. So since we're looking at the Marion County one, and Beth, if you have that one up. So on the second page of it, and the first whereas, it says the last prosecutors of the U.S. Constitution are the county sheriffs and we the people. Now, some of the other ones left out
Sheriff.
the sheriff. Any reason why? Or do you know why? Or would you prefer, or does it matter that county sheriff is not in some of the other ones and in some of the other ones, or do you know?
If you would allow me to talk.
Please, yeah.
I did speak to Denise. Me and Denise spoke about this. Some have it, some don't. I do remember it being in there. I would prefer it being taken out. This is something the BOCC is doing. But I'll tell you this, when you look at, I read articles throughout the country, one specifically in Texas, and when the board passed it and they went to the sheriff, and just like Commissioner Kitchen used great and judge, the sheriff said, I wish I'd have thought of that, because there are a lot of sheriffs out there that understand that people that carry not only help with violence, that shouldn't be happening, but they also can help with their agencies, because when you can stop the force or you can stop a robbery. Matter of fact, turned on the news this morning. Ex-Marine stopped a robbery because he was carrying. Who knows what that would have went into? But he was there. He was able to stop it. So I would prefer to take sheriff out. I know there's some in, there's some out. But I would prefer that we take sheriff out of ours.
Okay, so being that you made a motion to approve Marion County ones and county sheriffs is in the Marion County one, obviously we need to clarify that, but
Yeah.
do you have an opinion on that, of why one's in and why it's not? Or, obviously I'm just asking you that, so I don't know. And I kind of don't know specific why either, so I'm a little hesitant on that. Yeah, it's, right, and I don't know why. Also, you can speculate, please.
This is pure speculation, but county sheriffs are local county law enforcement that is passed down from the state, right? So counties are a political subdivision of the state. So the state has asked counties to carry out law enforcement at the local level. So I think perhaps what they were alluding to is this is the county, the counties, the states work together to enforce
That's what
It's
it's
in
in.
state law. I think that's, I don't know.
I can do it either way. I can either leave it in or take it out, however you
So
want.
I don't care either. I don't, it wouldn't make any difference to me.
I'd kind of like to know the answer, but once we vote on it, I might. Same page, section 4, under section, they have the 5 sections listed there. So section 4, it says upon the minutes of this meeting, and some of the other ones don't have,
Yeah.
yeah. I think they all, I think they all have that one, but if you go on that one, then section 5, it says this resolution shall become effective upon adoption. And my concern is, why have the 2 there? Why even have section 4 in there? Why not just have section 5? And
May I answer that for you? So when you're putting something in the minutes, that's for posterity. That's so that anybody that comes up, and even though this is already in our meeting agenda, it's the minutes that will come out subsequent to this. It will then formally be in the minutes, okay?
okay, so
Then-
recommendation would be have both in there, have 4 in.
Right, then the resolution means that when we vote on it right away, this resolution is effective.
Yeah, I have no problem with 5, but I reading some of the other ones, I think 5 was in every one, but 4 was a little different. So, okay, and I'm fine with that. That kind of answers my question. So really, the only question I have is if the sheriff.
So here, I'm gonna go ahead and make an amendment to my motion, to delete sheriff out of there. Leave, delete sheriff out of there.
Well,
Well, just use, be us, and just use the be us.
well, this is my predicament here. I don't know if that's should be in there or shouldn't be in there. And that's why it was a legal question, and I think Commissioner Kitchen probably nailed it, but it was speculation, so
Can I give you another speculation? It's our resolution. It can say anything we want it
I
to say.
understand that.
Right. So, I mean, if you, right, so.
I look at that as, okay, now we're listening to county sheriffs in there, and I haven't talked to any of the county.
That's why I'm making a motion to delete the sheriff, and just use us.
Because the sheriff is part of we the people, I would ask.
Well, I would agree too.
Chairman?
Amendment to my motion.
Right, so I'll amend my second.
Okay, so we got a first and a second. Any Commissioner Carnahan first, Commissioner Smith second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, none. That passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to my item. So 001.